You made a great film and now you want the world to see it. So how does that happen? It happens through what we call distribution and marketing. But the two most important components of distribution and marketing are artwork and trailer. Those are the elements that you use to get people's attention. So you want to get the attention of an audience, and the way that you do it is through unbelievably great, compelling artwork and a fantastic trailer. That is what we're going to focus on in today's episode. If you want to be a successful indie filmmaker, you need to know a lot about not just the production of movies, but the business. We are going to tell you the truth and reality of what really happens in the indie film business. Hi everybody, welcome back to Indie Filmmaking Truth Reality. I'm your host, Jeff Everett, and today we are going to be talking about how to make great artwork and a great, compelling trailer. Now, normally I would have a guest on for this episode, but there are so many possibilities for guests. I thought about it a lot. I thought, should I bring in a trailer company? Should I bring in a graphic artist, somebody who does artwork for a living? And I decided not to, and here's the reason. The reason is that this stuff is so subjective. So we could get the opinion of one person who would totally disagree with the next person who would totally disagree with the next person. So I'm going to give you my opinion as to sort of the foundational elements of making great artwork and great trailers, even though I hire people to do that. But I'm going to tell you basically what I say to these people, the artists and the editors, what I say to them in order to get hopefully what I want. And then they have to apply their art, and it is super, super artistic to be able to make a great poster, a great artwork, and a great trailer. So I want to get into the details of that. And I just sort of, like I said, I want to give you the foundational elements of what I consider to be great. All right, so let's start with that. So what is great? When it comes to artwork and trailer, these are the two foundational elements that you need in order to get the attention of your audience. All right, now you're going to need a great marketing campaign to draw them to want to look at your artwork and or hopefully watch your trailer. But the way it works in the movie business is you make a great movie. All right. If you don't make a great movie, chances are nobody's going to want to watch it. So it has to be a very good, compelling, entertaining movie. All right. Let's just check that box. You made a great movie. All right. Now you have to get it released properly. So let's say you get a great distributor. They believe in your movie. They release it properly. But part of that proper release is they have to do a very compelling marketing campaign. They have to do outreach to a potential audience to let them know that you made a great movie. So usually that happens through social media these days. I mean, if you're a big studio and you have a ton of money to spend, you do national advertising on television and billboards and all that kind of stuff that they do. But if you're an independent filmmaker, you're not going to have that kind of budget. So you're probably going to do mostly a social media campaign, maybe a couple of influencers, that type of thing. And you're going to hopefully do outreach to audiences and say, hey, everybody, I made a great movie. Check it out. You're going to send them probably to a streaming platform that your distributor put your movie onto. So let's say, just for example, it's Tubi. All right. Tubi, a free advertising video on demand streaming platform where they can watch the movie for free. I mean, hopefully you'll send them to a paid subscription platform, but let's just use that as an example. Okay. Now they're going to get there and hopefully they're going to look for your movie. All right. Hopefully the reason they went to Tubi was to find your movie. Meaning they're going to type in the name of your movie and you're going to be good. Now they're going to get there, and as soon as they type it in, a page is going to pop up, and chances are it's going to be your key art, the artwork, all right, for your movie, and there'll be a link to the trailer. Hopefully the social media campaign will have already shown the artwork. Now, if they don't go to Tubi with the intention of finding your artwork and your movie, chances are maybe they've gone to Tubi with the intention of just finding something that they want to watch that night. All right. So your little postage size thumbnail artwork is going to be amongst 50 or 60,000 other pieces of artwork that are on that platform. And they're going to be scanning at lightning speed. and they're not necessarily going to see yours unless it's super compelling. So the reason you have to have super compelling artwork is so that people will stop and say, hey, that looks interesting. Now remember, these days, we call them posters still. A poster, a theatrical poster, is 40 inches high by, I don't know, whatever it is, 30 inches wide. It's a poster. It's what hangs in, the marquee of a cinema. That's a poster. You don't have 40 inches by 30 inches on Tubi. You have 1.5 inches by an inch. That's the size of your artwork. That's why we call it a thumbnail. It's the size of your thumb, all right? And it's amongst 60,000 other thumbnails that are there. This big honking poster isn't jumping out at you. It's a little tiny thumbnail, tiny icon that they're going to go through at lightning speed as they're scrolling through all these other things. So the number one component, let's start with artwork before we get to trailers, all right? Because it starts with artwork. Usually people look at the thumbnail before they push the link to the trailer. Why? Because they have to get to the link to the trailer, and that starts with the artwork. So the first thing you see is the artwork, is that thumbnail artwork. It has to be super compelling, because if it's not, nobody is going to push the link on it. They're not going to be interested in it. So ironically, your thumbnail artwork and your trailer have to be as good as your movie is. These things have to be way better, because nobody's even going to get to your movie unless they like your artwork that leads them to the trailer that leads them to the movie. You need a super compelling piece of artwork because it starts with that. It has to be great. So let's focus on what makes a piece of artwork, a thumbnail graphic, tiny little piece of artwork, great. This is my opinion, okay? As I said at the beginning of this episode, if I were to bring on 10 graphic artists who do this for a living, they might have 10 different opinions, because this is art, and art is super subjective, all right? And this is unbelievably important, and it's super artistic. So here's what I believe you need to do. And again, I am focusing on indie films, all right? If you're releasing a gigantic, big, star-studded, star-driven film, I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, they're going to put the marquee actor on that piece of artwork. If you're paying Brad Pitt $30 million to do a movie, you better believe his face is going to be front and center on that artwork, all right? As it should be, because that's the draw. The draw is the name, the marquee actor. Or if you're doing a huge, sci-fi epic, action adventure like Jurassic World, you're going to put a big dinosaur, you're going to put some great graphic of or a Star Wars feature thing or something like that. That's what you're selling, all right? But when you're doing an indie feature film that doesn't have any marquee talent, pretty well no-name actors, they're good actors, but they have no marquee value, and you don't have huge special effects or huge sci-fi or this kind of stuff, you don't have that to work with. So you're going to need to focus on other things. All right, so here's the elements that I have found over time, and more so recently, all right, that work or don't work. Now, when I say more so recently, when I got into the business, we were releasing our movies on VHS and then ultimately on DVD. So you had a little bit of a bigger graphic. You had the DVD case, which was, 8 inches by 5 inches, all right? So it was bigger than this thumbnail size thing. So you had a little bit more room to work with, and people didn't have as much choice. They'd walk through, say, a Blockbuster store or a Hollywood video store or something like that, or even a Walmart, and there was, maybe 600 or 700 titles. There wasn't 60,000 titles. So the choice was more limited, so you could stand out amongst the crowd. But now the stakes have changed. There's way more titles and the graphics are smaller. So what makes a good graphic stand out from a not good one? Number one, I'm going to say, is color. Color drives, before I say that, you need to know who your target audience is. I've spoken about this so many times. If you see all my marketing videos, I always say, know who you're making your film for, all right? You can't go out to everybody with an indie film. And the reason the everybody audience is fantastic. A lot of filmmakers say to me, I say, who's your audience? They say, everybody's my audience. And I say, that's great. If you want everybody, you're not going to have enough money to do the marketing to get everybody, because everybody's a very big audience. So realistically and practically speaking, you're probably only going to have enough money to focus on a very core target audience. Who are that small group of people that you want to start with, who will love your movie and become your ambassadors and talk about it a lot, which will lead to other people watching it and other people, and it'll ripple, and hopefully you'll get everybody. That's how this works, all right? So we want to focus our marketing elements, i.e. our artwork and our trailer, on the core target niche audience. That's who we want to start with. We want to make sure at least we can get them, the people who we really think are going to like our film and who will relate to it. All right, so in no particular order, one of the very most important things is color. If you're going out, say, with a male-oriented film, you don't necessarily want to use those bright pastel-y colors. All right. If you're going female oriented, or depending on the style or the age, like let's say you're going to, say, teenage girls. I hate to say it, but pink works. They like pink. All right. I didn't create that. That's the way it is. This is all based on experience. When I say color, you got to have sort of a little bit of a background feel in there so that it'll draw their eye to it. All right. If it's too dark and you're going for, say, a young girl crowd, that's your niche audience, 12-year-old girls or something like that, give them sort of the colors that they're looking for. All right. Now, the next thing is, and this is where I disagree with a lot of indie filmmakers, but, again, this is so subjective. So what I'm telling you is just my opinion based on my experience. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because I'm not sure there is a right or wrong in this area. So a lot of indie filmmakers who have put their heart and soul into making their films, and it's a bit of sort of an ensemble cast. So they've got maybe 5 or 6 lead characters. They tend to want to put all of their characters on the artwork. They do this sort of like montage ensemble piece of art. They show 5 or 6 different characters in their various roles. And, and it looks good, but it's so hard to focus on. And you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what the storyline is, because there's all these different characters. Now, the reason filmmakers do that, there's 2 reasons. One is they think it looks good, but mostly the reason they do it is because they became friendly with the actors, and all the actors probably worked for a fraction of what they wanted to. So they want to kind of reward them and put them on the artwork. So they create this montagey artwork with everybody. So everybody kind of gets to be on the poster. It's nice. It's very nice for a director or producer to do that in order to reward their cast. But it's not good for marketing, because it's super difficult for the audience to focus on 5 or 6 different characters on a thumbnail-sized piece of artwork. So I'm going to tell you from my experience that it's better to have 1, maybe 2 characters on the artwork. You don't really want to have more than that, like if it's a drama. If it's not a drama and you're doing something that is, like I say, a thriller or sci-fi or horror, something like that, then maybe you're going to put, the monster, some special effect or some, other element like the dinosaur or something like that. All right. But on a drama, I would say focus on the main character the most, and maybe a secondary character. All right. To show some relationship going on. The main character pose that you choose has to be something that is relatable to the niche audience that you're going after. So, for instance, I'm going to use one of my films, okay? I'm going to use my gymnastics film, Full Out. All right? The main core element in that film, there's various elements, but the main core element is a female gymnast. She wanted to be an Olympian, and now she's trying to make a comeback to help her college team win the national championship. That's what this story is about. Now, there's a whole dance component. There's a whole hip-hop dance component. So there's lots and lots of characters on the dance side. There's lots of other gymnasts. There's a coach. There's the mother. There's various things going on in that film. But the core element and the core niche target audience is young girls, 12-year-old girls who aspire to be Olympic gymnasts or, to be elite gymnasts. All right. So doesn't it make sense to put one image, the core image of the elite gymnast looking in an elite pose, standing as though she just landed a very important vault or dismount off of one of the elements, like, off the bars or something like that. That's what you're looking for because that's what the audience wants. The audience wants to envision and relate to that. What's really difficult as an indie filmmaker is to really focus on what the single core element of your story is, because that's the element that you want to share with your audience, especially if it's the compelling reason why you chose that core audience. If I was to think that the dance component of my film was more compelling to my audience than the gymnastics component, then even though the core storyline of the movie is the gymnast, I might want to make my artwork feature the dancer. If I think that there is more relatability to the audience through the dancer than there is to the gymnast. Why? Because that artwork needs to capture the attention of the audience in order to get it to the next phase, which is the trailer, which I'm going to talk about. It's not necessarily about telling the story the way you've told it in the movie. It's about capturing the audience's attention the way you want them to perceive what they want to see. And this is why it's so artistic and almost so scientific. All right? And it's a guess. Like I say, it's very subjective. There's no proper right or wrong. But in this story that I'm talking about, is the gymnast more important than the dancer, or the dancer more important than the gymnast? So I chose to say that the gymnast is more important. Not necessarily because the story is more focused on the gymnast. Because remember, in the real world, there's way more young girls who are enrolled in dance classes than are in gymnastics. Way more. But I just don't feel that dance is my core subject target audience. I feel like gymnastics is, because it's even more niche than dance. And that's what I want. I want to capture the gymnastics crowd. So that's why I focus on the gymnast. There was various iterations of the artwork where one had the coach, one had the mother, one had the teammate, one had the boyfriend. I mean, there's various iterations, and you can do various iterations. But there's going to be one iteration that is what we call your key art, the one that's going to go on to the streaming platform, the one that you're going to use in your social media. All right, you can have other things going on and other, elements and other photos and stuff like that. But the key art is, the reason it's called key is because it's the single sort of focus of your target market and your audience awareness campaign. I used red, white, and blue because I wanted to make it very Americana. So remember, I said color's very super important. But when I'm talking about image, the audience needs to be able to focus just on that one thing immediately, within a nanosecond. As soon as they look at it, their eye has to take it to their brain. It has to process and say, aspirational gymnast, that's me. That's what they have to say right away, which creates the curiosity to stop on it and say, what's this? All right. Now, another very important component. All right. So you've got image. So I say, don't crowd it with too many characters because you can't focus. The mind can't focus on a lot of characters. I say better to have one, maybe two at the most, compelling colors that lend itself to the theme that you're trying to, the background, right? And then title treatment, very important. Some piece of artwork feature the title treatment. It's kind of front and center. Some make it a little more subtle. The font you use, the size, the color. I mean, again, super artistic what you're going to decide to use in terms of the title treatment. Now, the title obviously is super important too. All right, we're not going to get into that. It's part of storytelling. So you got to choose a great title. But the way you depict your title on a piece of artwork, the way it's part of the artwork, how you show your title. You don't want it to crowd your image, but you also don't want it to get lost, because people need to know what is the title, and they need to get it very clearly and cleanly. So I've seen some great, big bold fonts. I've seen some scripted stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Just look at all the artwork that you see on all these streaming platforms. But choosing a title treatment also that lends itself to the audience. So in my case, there were two kind of compelling things with the gymnastics film. One is sort of that college, blocky letter look that all the colleges go with. That was one look. The other is kind of a scripted, more feminine type of look. I debated back and forth. As a matter of fact, if you see sometimes on my artwork, you're going to see on that piece of artwork, you're going to see the college bold look, which I kind of like better. Why? Because I'm male. I'm a male. Males tend to go for that bold, collegey look more so than females who tend to go for the scripted look. but I released the film with the scripted look because I felt that it was more appropriate for the target audience. So it's not scripted, but it's softer around the edges. It's more sort of like a handwritten, softer, scriptier look than that big, bold university, look. So that was a choice. That's a big choice. But both of those title treatments were very clear. They were very clean. They were written nicely so that you can more or less see them cleanly. That's it. Those were the elements that we're focused on. Now, can you put a credit block on there? Yeah, you can, but you don't really need a credit block. Nobody needs to know who's on this. You don't want to crowd artwork with credits, especially the credit block. Now, do you want to put the names of the actors on the top? Maybe, but what if you don't have any name actors? Like, the reason people put the actors on is because people say, oh, it's got this, this, and this. If you have no-name actors, no offense to no-name actors who are very good actors, but what are you really selling to people? They don't know the names. It might actually be a negative sell to put them on because it's like, I like this piece of art, but I don't know any of these actors. Who the heck are they? So they actually lose curiosity. So I tend to not use actors' names unless they have a name. You're going to see on Full Out Artwork, I actually use the names. I've since changed that. So I tend to not go with names anymore, but that's a choice. Again, you could go either way. Again, sometimes it's, by the way, it's contracted that you have to put their names on the artwork. All right. But again, if you have a no-name director, you have a no-name cinematographer, do you really need them on there? No, you don't really want to crowd it. You want to keep your artwork as simple and compelling as possible so that at a glance, the core target audience will say, what is that? And stop on it. I need to just check that out for a second. Remember, you get a nanosecond as they're scrolling through it at super high speed, and they have to say, wait, what was that? That looked like a compelling, like that, I could relate to that person I like the colors, the title treatment hit my eye. That's it. Those are the core elements. Now, composition, artists talk about composition, where each thing should be on there. Again, when you're talking about the size of your thumbnail, your composition basically is in the center. All right. You don't have a lot to work with. All right. Just because it's not big enough. You can get creative and artistic. Like, you can have a black thing with, one white letter on it. That's very compelling, depending, if it's a psychological thriller or horror, something like that. So there's lots and lots of different ways to attract the audience, as long as you know who your audience is and who you're going for. But my message on artwork is focus on the compelling elements that target your audience, not necessarily that you think tell your story the best, you think the audience is going to believe, and keep it simple. And not overly colorful, okay, depending on who your audience is. Sometimes you want to go super dark, sometimes light, sometimes, different colors. But keep it very, very targeted and simple so that somebody can identify and relate with it right away. All right, so let's say you get that right and your artwork is very compelling and you get that viewer who didn't know what they want to watch that night to stop on it. All right, so now they're going to click on your artwork. When they click on it, it's going to take them, say, on a streaming platform to the page, that gives the description. So there's going to be the artwork, say, on the left side. There's going to be maybe a couple of photos at the bottom. There's going to be a very short description on that page. And then there's going to be a link to the trailer. They might look at the description for a second. They might read one sentence. This movie's about this, color 2025, the basic stuff, starring these people who they've never heard of. All right, but hopefully that page is simple enough, which it usually is on a streaming platform, right? Because they don't want people to spend too much time there. They want them to click on the trailer. Now you click on that trailer. All right, hopefully the viewer clicks on the trailer and they get to that trailer. And obviously you've done a good job with your artwork, good enough to get them to click on the trailer. So now the way you're going to hook them to watch your movie is to have a super compelling trailer. Again, you want to talk about artistic. Like, I'm a filmmaker, so I get to do this. I get to say what I'm about to say. I mean, I've directed 5 features. I've written 5. A lot of you filmmakers aren't going to agree with what I'm about to say, but a lot of you will. You think making a film is hard? Try cutting a trailer, okay? Taking a 90 or 100-minute film and cutting it down and telling your message in 90 seconds, that is art. That is challenging. That is artistic. because you have so much material to work with. You have so many options, so many directions you can go in. Cutting a trailer is that's high-end art, cutting it really well. There are no hard, fast rules on this, okay? There's a couple of guidelines that I'm going to lay out in my estimation, all right? Number one, I just said 90 seconds. We used to, not me, I'm not an editor, but I work very closely with the editors, all right? I tell them we need this, and this. I don't do the actual cutting, all right? They do it. I used to say, let's cut 2-minute trailers, because that was sort of the industry standard, all right? But then that changed probably 5-6 years ago. I went down to 90 seconds. 90 seconds is nice for a trailer on, on a site, but not on social media. All right. When you're going out there, you're going to need 15, 20, 30 seconds at the most. So you're going to need 2 trailers. You're going to need that full version trailer, which is 90 seconds. And I wouldn't make it more than 90 seconds because people can't really focus unless it's a gigantic theatrical release and you're watching in a movie theater. Maybe they can focus for 2 minutes. All right. It's 120 seconds. 90 seconds, I think, is the right length for an indie film. But then you're going to need a 20 or 30 second little concept trailer hit that tells it more quickly, more in a more compelling way. Very tricky. All right, so let's start with the 90 second trailer. Let's talk about what that has to say and do in order to grab somebody. And then we'll dumb it down and we'll get down to the 30 second version, the 20 second version. All right, which is, maybe the television or social media version. All right. The first thing that this trailer needs to do is it needs to tell the core story. This is what I talk to a lot of filmmakers about, and so many people disagree with me. I say, tell me the log line of your movie. A log line is one sentence. That's why they call it a line. It's it's not 3 sentences. It's not a synopsis. It's one sentence that describes the core plot of your movie. People say, well, you don't understand. There's like 5 different plots going on. There's 5 different characters and they're going in different directions. I say, I do understand, because that's good storytelling. All right. There's going to be lots of characters. There's going to be lots of different plot points and storylines and all this kind of stuff. That's what makes a movie entertaining. So I get it. But what's the single most important one? When people are talking to somebody else and somebody says, what's that movie about? They need to say in one sentence what the movie's about. So they're not going to focus on the 15 other things that are going on, even though there are 15 other really good things that are going on. They're going to focus on one single one. Which one do you want them to focus on? What do you focus on in a filmmaker? What was the intent to tell the story? Like when somebody says to you, and you have a half a floor on an elevator pitch, you get, 15 seconds to say what your movie's about. What are you going to say? What actually is your movie about? That's called your log line. Yes, there are other things going on. There's lots of other things going on, but there's one main thing going on. So you need to, as the storyteller, as the filmmaker, you need to decide what that main thing is. Now, here's the crazy thing, all right? The most important thing in a trailer is to be able to tell that main storyline to people in 90 seconds. And you can add lots. We're going to get into, dressing it up and adding the other elements, all right? But not necessarily what you like as the main thing. It's what you think your audience is going to like. Remember, you know who your core target audience is. You know what they're looking for because you've analyzed who they are and what they want out of the movie. The movie ultimately is going to deliver them to them. So when you're starting to think about cutting your trailer, think about what is going to compel them to want to watch your movie. What are the elements in there that are the most telling and inspiring and motivating for them to want to click on that movie to watch it? Even though sometimes the filmmaker is so in love and so engaged in their own story that they can't see the forest through the trees anymore, all right? Or the trees through the forest. Sometimes you just get lost as a filmmaker because you're so into the art that you created that you almost forget what it's about because you're so entangled with everything. So that's why it's good to have an editor, and primarily a trailer editor, who's not emotionally involved with the story. All right, who just looks at it and says, hey, this story's about this. Here's the core. There's a lot of things going on, but here's the core element that I think the audience that we're going after is going to relate to the most. These are the things in the movie that they're going to relate to the most. So these are the 5 or 6 things that I got to stick into that trailer, the moments, the little verbiages, whatever it is, to make the people engaged to want to watch the movie. That's why trailer cutting is such an art, all right? To be able to identify what those things are and then strategically place them in an order that makes sense to engage the viewer, so that it kind of builds a little bit, this, then that, and it takes them on a mini journey, the viewer, in order to want them to see the rest of the movie. The key thing is choosing those little moments or those little snippets that tell that core story that engage the audience the most. Not necessarily engages you, the filmmaker, because you know your story too well. Engages the audience. And that's why I think it's better to get an editor, an outside editor, a trailer editor, to cut your trailer, because they're not emotionally involved in the things that you think are the most compelling. Now, it could be that what you think and what your audience think are the same thing. That's a possibility. But I've seen many, many filmmakers who get too tangled up in what they believe they want to tell in the story and forget who their audience is, or never even thought about who their audience is to start with. So that's why a trailer editor can say, this is what is going to compel 12-year-old girls the most. These are the 5 moments in the film, the 5 speeches, the 5 just snippets that are going to grab your audience the most. Then the next so now you've identified that. Now you've got to weave them together. Remember, you don't have to tell it in order the way it happened. You're never going to do that. You're going to jump around. All right? Now, I'd say the second single most important thing in a trailer is the music. Now, you're not licensing big music, all right? I mean, on an independent film. If you have obviously a huge soundtrack, you're going to put that song in. You're going to put, snippets from all your songs. Music evokes emotion. And emotion is what draws people in, all right? So telling those components of the story that you chose with the right emotional connection, the music, is going to be what brings it all together. All right, so even if you don't have this huge, big, epic soundtrack, even if you have to license stock music, just choose the music that brings out the right flavor of what you want the audience to feel. All right. If it's inspirational, there's these inspirational songs. If it's dramatic, if it's sad, it's happy, it's upbeat, it's dancing. Music tells the story the same way the story tells the story, but it almost brings the emotion out. Like, a lot of editors will cut the music and the verbiage track before they cut the video, because that's telling the story. So you want to really think about which elements you're going to use in terms of the emotional component of the music. All right. It's not what the people are saying. It's what the music is saying. It's what the people are hearing, the audience. That's what's drawing them in. All right, so super, super important. Again, if you don't have a big soundtrack, don't worry about it. Just choose the moments in your licensed stock music that just work the best in terms of telling that. Then it's just a matter of weaving it together in the right order. All right, so some people like to tell it sequentially, the story. Some people like to start at the end, start at the middle, start at the beginning. This is the art of storytelling. It's the same with your movie. Some people start at the beginning and go through till the end. Some people start at the end, go backwards. Some people start in the middle and jump all over. You get to do this. This is called art, all right? And you weave it together and you feel what it's going to be. Now, again, I am not a professional trailer cutter. All right. So if we got people on, they would go into lots of details about how to find this and how to do this and how to you choose this shot over this shot and bring this one in afterwards and bring the music in here and have somebody say this over another shot that you're looking at. So these are all techniques of editing. All right. Super important. Once you've done all this, you need to test it. You need to put this in front of lots and lots of different people, especially what you believe is your core audience. And you need to see how they react. It's one thing to say, what'd you think? Generally, you're going to put it in front of friendly people. They're going to tell you, yeah, it looks good. The best thing is putting it in front of somebody who you never know, or they don't even know that you're the filmmaker. And they say to the person, wow, I want to watch that film. Or like, where can I find that film? That's when you know you got something that's working. That's the effect you want. You want them to say, hey, where can I watch the film? Or I want to watch this film. But truly say that, not out of politeness to the filmmaker. So you want to just keep testing it and honing it a little bit. Remember, it's only 90 seconds, so you can play with it. You can fine tune it. You can change a shot here or there. You can change the music, change the pacing, the speed at which it comes at you, the lighting, the darkness, the brightness, the tone. All this kind of stuff is all adjustable and needs to be adjusted. And people spend their whole lives doing this. This is an art form. It's a major art form to cut a trailer nicely and compellingly. So test it a lot, figure out what's working best. Then that's going to be your core trailer. All right. And again, this is not easy, folks. I mean, it's harder to make the trailer than it is to make the film. That's what I think. All right. But, you don't have to agree with me on that. All right. Now, once you've got that trailer, now you've got 90 seconds and it's super compelling. Now you're going to have to do the tough part, which is cut it down to, say, 30 seconds. So you're going to cut 2/3 of that trailer out to get it down to the core 30-second, maybe even 20 seconds. All right? Because that's what is going to be that little pitch reel, that little concept reel that is going to really grab people, say, on your social media campaign, where they're only going to watch for maybe even 15 seconds, 15 or 20 seconds. All right? That's all the attention you're going to get from them. So it's going to be choosing those 1 or 2 or 3 special clips, special musical hits that really tell the story. Now, as a storyteller, so remember I said, know who your audience is and know what your movie's about and focus really on what your audience wants to see so that you're telling them what they really need to see. You want to talk about micromanaging that. You were basically taking this down to maybe 3 or 4 tiny little special moments that matter, that are going to deliver the message to your audience super succinctly, very quickly, and emotionally capture them in that 15 to 20 second trailer or 30 seconds. All right. That's why I say it's so difficult, because there's so many you're taking, say, 100-minute film and cutting it down to 20 seconds so that you can compel an audience to want to watch your film. But guess what? That's what good trailer editors do. They're able to do that. And when you see a good trailer, you go, wow, I really want to watch this. This is unbelievable. And when you see a bad one, it's like, it's possible that it's the greatest movie of all time and the trailer just didn't compel you. So that's why it's so darn important to get this right. Because remember, this epic, fantastic film that you spent years and years, or perhaps decades of your life making, killed yourself to get financed, killed yourself to get made, killed yourself to get it distributed, could boil down to a 20-second little snippet trailer where somebody says, not for me. Or they say, wow, I love this. And that takes them to the film. And then hopefully your film delivers, okay? But whether or not your film delivers doesn't matter until you get them there. All right? You gotta get them to watch your film. And the way to do it is with that, first the artwork to get them to the trailer, and then the trailer to get them to the film. So that's why this is so important. These are the 2 elements that matter the most. I mean, I'm not adding in, say, the social media campaign that gets them to the artwork, because maybe they didn't get there through a social media campaign. Maybe they just got there on a streaming site, right? Like they land on Tubi and they say, I want to watch something tonight. They're scrolling through, they see your artwork. The artwork is the first draw. They say, I like this, let's check it out. They go on, they watch the trailer. Sometimes it's only the 30-second version of the trailer. Maybe it's the 90-second version of the trailer. And that's what compels them to want to watch the movie. But if you're doing it through social media and you're only getting 20 seconds to get their attention, then you got 20 seconds to hit them hard with that fantastic trailer that evokes their emotion, that captures them, that draws them in, that says, hey, we need to watch this movie instead of some huge, big epic studio film. You're going to watch this movie. Why? Because you have a good trailer. Remember, you don't have any A-list actors. You don't have any big name director. You have no big special effects. You have no big marketing campaign. All you got is good artwork and a good trailer. Now, here's the good news. The good news is if you have that, if you have really compelling artwork and a really compelling trailer, then you could probably get them to watch your film. That's fantastic. The bad news is it's not so easy to do. It's super challenging to do. You want to be a good artist, obviously do your best, but I would say bring in people who really do this well. A lot of people, a lot of filmmakers that I know don't want to spend a lot of money on artwork. They don't want to spend a lot of money on trailers because they say, well, I'm the filmmaker, I'm the artist, I can cut my own trailer. And I say sometimes, yeah, if you're super artistic, you can, as long as you're focused on audience, not on yourself, not on your own story. Focus on what the audience wants to see and do it really well. And some artists, some filmmakers do it fantastic. Cutting a trailer is a different specialty than cutting a movie. A trailer editor is a completely different specialty. They're able to tell the story in 30 seconds as opposed to 2 hours. So I say spend the money, get it right. Those two things are the single most important things you can do for your film in order to get viewership. So am I passionate about this? Yes. Do I get it right all the time? No. I wish I was better at it. Every filmmaker wishes they were better at it. It's very, very difficult to do, and hopefully you're going to do it right. But if you test it over and over and over, you have a better chance of getting it right because now you're seeing the audience reacting to it. And like I say, with the trailer, all you want them to do when they watch that trailer is say, wow, I want to watch the movie. That's the key. And when they see the artwork, they say, wow, I need to see the trailer. That's the key. If that's working, there's no right or wrong other than that. The right or wrong is, did you get them to watch the movie? Other than that, I don't care if you win awards for this or that or, best trailer, doesn't matter. The reward is somebody watched your trailer and said, I need to see that movie. That's the goal. That's the reward. So good luck. It's not easy. I know you can do it. Have fun. See you next time. As always, if you have questions or comments or whatever, please feel free to connect with me via email, jdeverett@deverettmedia.com. I always look forward to feedback from the listeners. And please subscribe to my channel and to this podcast, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.